Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. It is CoachFury here and we are back today with the latest episode of our Chicago Bulls Let's Play series in Draft Day Sports Pro Basketball 21. And well, we've smashed through the season really in this season of the Let's Play, mainly because we wanted to get to this moment in time, which is the biggest moment I guess of this season, which is of course the playoffs. And let's dive into it and see who we've got in the first round, talk a little bit about the matchup, and then actually play the first round of the playoffs. So, how did we get here? That's the first question I think we should be asking ourselves. Well, we got here in some style, it's certainly fair to say. We have the best record in the league. Of course, coming off our championship season, pressure was on us to try and get back to that kind of level, to hopefully be in with the shout of winning the championship again this year. And well, we certainly have done that. We've won 61 games this year, losing 21. We have the best offense, the number one ranked offense in the entire league. And well, we're in some really, really fantastic form. And we talked a little bit about that last episode, I believe. But, you know, the actual starting 8 rotation hasn't changed since last year, really. We've still got the likes of Peyton, Trent Jr., Leonard, Clark, and Carter Jr. kind of holding out the starting roles for us, with Jackson Jr. sort of being our main sort of 6-man piece, and then White and McConnell kind of supporting. And then we've had a supporting cast of mixed bags and mixed performances this year. I think it's fair to say that Patrick Williams has had a really good season for us, and whilst it might not necessarily show through in his stats in terms of the performance, but he certainly has proved himself to possibly be a backup to the power forward and the centre position for us if we need to, if we hit injuries. Elsewhere, I mean, Noel and Potor have kind of done okay, really out of the others. But Robinson's probably been the biggest disappointment I think we've probably had in this entire Let's Play series, really. In that, I honestly thought that he would be that outside scorer that we kind of needed, who would play a bit of defense. But unfortunately, when he has been given the opportunity, in my opinion, he hasn't really taken it. I mean, if he was able to get the same sort of performance numbers as Trent Jr., in terms of these outside shot and in terms of general shooting, then he would probably arguably be pushing for a starting role. We may be sitting here considering whether we run maybe Clark or Leonard in sort of a bench sort of 28 minutes plus sort of opportunity, but it didn't materialise. We are where we are, and that's perfectly fine. We're in a great situation coming into the playoffs here. We have no injuries. We have everyone healthy. We can run our main offense, our main lineups, and see how we go from there. So, biggest question is who are we facing in this first round of the playoffs as the number 1 seed? We are, of course, playing the 8th seed Toronto Raptors, and let's take a little look at Toronto and see what type of team we're up against today, and if there's anything we need to keep an eye out for, whether we need to make any strategy adjustments or not. So, this is the Toronto Raptors. They are a 39-43 team, so the Eastern Conference traditionally has been a weaker conference in terms of the back end of the seedings, and it's not surprising this year. It's materialised into the same thing. So they have had an interesting season, I think it's fair to say. I mean, they're normally led by their main star, which is Pascal Siakam, who I think would have been an interesting threat for us in this series. But unfortunately, as you can probably see there, he broke his ankle, so he is out for the entire playoffs. He is not coming back, which is great news for us. It's a shame for Toronto, but I mean, in hindsight, whilst he would have been an interesting kind of threat for us and he'd have put up some good numbers for them, we do have probably arguably the league's best front court, so we should have been able to deal with that. Outside of that, they do have an interesting front court. They do have Ryan Boucher, but he's more of a kind of do-it-all, grab rebounds, kind of that type of post player rather than a scorer. So he's not really an offensive threat as such. And in terms of the sort of the backcourt positions and sort of the forward positions, they've got an interesting bag of players really. I mean, in the backcourt they've got Brogdon, who's a really good outside shooter, and they've also got the likes of Van Fleet, who again is a fairly good outside shooter, sort of holding down that backcourt for them. Then they've got Klay Thompson, and agent Klay Thompson, who is still a really, really good shooter, which is not surprising. I mean, we all know how good Klay Thompson is at shooting. But yeah, he's probably going to be their main offensive threat, if I had to guess. And then you've got likes of Bruce Bowen, who's a pretty all-round kind of forward player for them. So In terms of the insights, what are the things that we should be worried about for them? Well, I mean, they're a really good defensive team, and that's pretty much how they got into their sort of 8th seed playoff position. It's fair to say they're not a very good offensive team. Their net rating is actually negative, which is surprising to see that on a playoff team, to be honest with you. So I think we're in good shape. I mean, we should be in a really strong position to take this one. I'm just hoping that we can get it done early without injuries. This is kind of the main thing that I'm worried about at this moment in time. So in terms of our strategy, I'm not going to be changing anything. I'm going to just run with what we've got, I think. So we're going to still play our usual post-focus, passive style of play. We're obviously going to have Peyton and Clark kind of pick up the perimeter guys, and Leonard sort of pick up anyone. And then we're going to pretty much run with the depth chart that we have in place. I think that's just, there's going to be too much talent essentially on our side to kind of have this one done, I think, in my opinion. And we'll see how it goes from there. So that's how our playoffs look across the rest of the Eastern Conference. I think I talked last time, but I really hope the Atlanta Hawks get knocked out by the Orlando Magic. The Hawks are just a pain every single time we play them. I just hate playing against Trae Young. He is just simply that good in this version of the Let's Play. So if we can avoid him, that would be absolutely fantastic. Then we've got the 76ers, the Knicks, the Hornets and the Pacers. So, I mean, out of those, the Hornets have had a really good season. I mean, they finished 8 games behind us, but they beat us, I think, a couple of times. So that'll be interesting to see how they do. And the 76ers are an interesting bag. I mean, they've got Embiid still, I believe, and Simmons. So we'll see how that one works out. Then in the Western Conference, I really cannot call how the Western Conference is going to go. I mean, the Warriors have had a resurgence this year. The Jazz, by playing fantastic basketball up until the trade deadline, and then they traded for Paul George, and it's been a little bit mixed since then. So maybe Paul George has still got something in the tank with the Jazz to kind of make something happen there, but we'll see. We'll see how that one works. And then you've got the usual suspects really of the Suns, the Pelicans, the Mavericks, and surprisingly the Thunder are back in it now. So we'll see how it works. We'll come back and we'll maybe look at some of those as we go through. But the main focus today obviously is our Chicago Bulls team and getting through this first round. So as usual, guys, we'll sim through, we'll review the box scores, and when we get down to a crucial game, we will certainly be watching it. So game 1 of the round 1 of the playoffs against the Toronto Raptors. Can we get that first win on the ground? We can, in this 11-point win against the Raptors. Let's take a look and see how we got on. So yeah, as kind of predicted, we had a really, really good shooting night. Brandon Clark with a fantastic 31 and 11, which is awesome to see. And yeah, everyone pretty much shooting fairly well for us. It looks like Williams had to come in. I'm guessing we had some early foul trouble or something there. But on their side, I think Brogdon is kind of the main offensive threat, really. If he gets just hot from downtown, then they might be able to stay in some games. But, you know, good performance from us so far. We'll certainly take that win. And we've got no injuries, so we will go on to game 2. I'm not going to make any changes. I think we'll keep it as is. And we suffer a 10-point loss. Oof, that's a bit frustrating. We don't manage to hold home court. What happened here? So Van Fleet decided to go off on one and score 22 points. And, well, we just didn't really have an answer. I mean, it looks like it was a fairly close game late on, but they took the first quarter quite convincingly in the end in this one. So that brings the series back to 1 apiece as we head on the road. We'll just get the Western Conference games done. And let's see how we do. On the road, can we get that win? We do. So we managed to claw ourselves back ahead in this series with a fairly convincing 20-point win in the end. Jackson Jr. having a good game. 29 points, 12 rebounds, 6 assists is certainly awesome. What's interesting, actually, is fair to say, is that Thompson is coming off the bench for them, which I didn't expect. I expected probably them to play Van Vliet, Brogdon, Thompson, and then probably put Bowen, Bowen, no, not Bowen, it's Brown. It's Bruce Brown off the bench for them. So interesting that that's happened. I guess it's surprising that Williams is having to come in and play some minutes. I don't think I have him assigned to anything. So we managed to take a 2-1 lead in this one. Can we take a 3-1 lead? We can. So we managed to get the job done on the road in the end. A 7-point win. So we've got 2 opportunities at home to bring this one home. Led by Jaren Jackson Jr. with his 38 points there as well. And it looks like they are I mean, they're hanging in there on games against us, I think it's fair to say. They're putting up a pretty good fight, especially in this one. They put 39 up in the fourth quarter. So they did have a bit of a starring comeback to try and get themselves back in this one. But simply, looks like we had a little bit too much going for us in this one. Our points in the paint, 64 to their 36. We're just killing them inside at the moment. So we'll get the Western Conference games done. Let's go to Game 5 of the series, and of course we are going to watch it. Let's just double check the depth chart. Yep, we're all good there. We're not going to make any changes, guys. I think we'll just run with what is, and we will obviously make ourselves AI controlled because I don't want to do any subs. So no adjustments for them, no adjustments for us. Can we get the Game 5 win and get ourselves out of this first round of the playoffs quite comfortably and get us moving on to second round? Right, let's see how this goes. I'm just going to turn the volume down on my speakers so you don't hear that. And off we go. Can the Chicago Bulls get the job done here at home against the Toronto Raptors in round 1? Hopefully we can, and we can move on. But I have to say, I mean, I was surprised with that win they got against us at home. I mean, that certainly caused a little bit of concern early on, but we've managed to be fairly convincing in the other games. As soon as I say that, though, the Toronto Raptors are taking a little bit of a lead here in the first quarter. But for me, if I was playing against this Bulls team with the Raptors, I would certainly be trying to utilise some of that outside shooting that they have. Because for me, I think that's the only chance they have, is if they can get that outside shooting working and get Boucher in to kind of make a bit of trouble on the glass, and maybe that will give them enough. But it looks like going into the end of this first quarter, we are taking a little bit of a lead now. Brandon Clark with 4 of 4, having a really, really strong start to this game. But the Raptors are holding themselves in it. Their shooting numbers are still looking very, very good. 46% field goal range, 41 from downtown. Meanwhile, we're just pretty much dominating inside. It looks like our turnovers have been the issue. 8 turnovers to their 3. But when we're getting the ball, we are making good possessions here and making the points count. But they are hanging in. Their outside shooting is kind of keeping them in it, along with those turnovers. And 5 steals is worth saying as well. So it looks like this one could be going down a little bit to the wire in this first game of our 2 that we're probably going to have at home. But I'm hoping we can squeak it out in the end. Hopefully we'll just have just enough talent to get the job done. But it looks like going into this half-time, we are going to be ahead by about 7 or 8 points, it looks like, at this moment in time. But Brandon Clark is having an awesome game. 8 of 8, 16 points. He's been perfect so far in this one. Pretty much taken the team on his back from scoring-wise. And no surprise, he is the player of the half. 16.6 rebounds. That's pretty good to say the least. Elsewhere, it looks like we've had a bit of foul trouble in terms of the front court, I'm guessing. Jackson Jr. with 3 fouls. No, interesting that Williams and Noel have had to come in. We've had to utilise a bit more of the bench than I probably would have liked to. Maybe their sub out is a little bit higher than probably it should be. We'll make those adjustments probably for the next one. But if we come out into the third quarter, Brandon Clark is 10 of 10 now. He's 11 of 12 now. Okay, so he's missed 1 shot. 12 of 13. 24 points. Absolutely insane. He's having an absolute storming game here. On the Raptors side, I mean, VanVleet and Brogdon have been pretty awful. Thompson's been fairly solid, and interestingly, he has come in at point guard, which I've never seen before. But he's 5 of 6, so he's having a pretty good shooting night from their perspective. Boucher's actually having a fairly good shooting night as well. He's actually taking some shots, which is surprising. But on our side, we've just our offensive efficiency is kind of getting the job done here as we take an 11-point lead into the back end of the third quarter. Leonard's having a poor shooting night though, 3 of 10, so he's obviously struggling against the likes of Brown in that sort of small forward position. But we are fairly comfortable now at this point going into the fourth quarter, 12-point lead. It's just a case, I think, of more if Thompson decides to go nuts on 3 points shooting, and then we might be in a bit of trouble. But most of the rotation is looking fairly good now. We are pretty comfortable now, nearly a 20-point lead at this point. Now it is a 20-point lead. So we are going to probably get this one done in game 5. I'm not going to slow it down because we are fairly well ahead here, and with 4 and a bit minutes to go. It looks like this one is going to be a comfortable win for us. I'm not sure why it's bugging out a little bit in terms of this pace here, but it looks like we're going to take a 15 or so point win in this one. Game 5 is in the books. It ends up being a 12-point game in the end. And Brandon Clark, no surprising, he is player of the game. That is some pretty insane shooting numbers. 14 of 17, 14 rebounds. Really good night from his perspective. And the Raptors are going home, and the Chicago Bulls are going through into the next round. And if you may have just seen there that we do have an injury to Noel, who's out for 8 days, but I'm not going to necessarily worry about that too much because he's not in our rotation. But what I will do actually is we will just double check the sub out rates here. 70, 70, 70, 55, 70. Yes, the sub out rates are all okay really. Interesting that we had to go a little bit deeper into the bench than I probably would have liked. So how's the rest of the playoffs looking? That is the question for us to explore now. It looks like the Hawks and the Magic are 3-2. The Knicks are 3-2 up against the 76ers. 76ers could be going home early. The Hornets are up against the Pacers. In the Western Conference, oh my goodness me, look at that. All of them are tied up at 2 apiece. Wow, okay, I've never seen that before. I've never seen an entire conference like that. Just shows how closely matched these teams are. And I mean, if you go to the standings, you could probably see that. In terms of, you know, outside the Grizzlies and the Lakers, this patch of teams is 10 games difference. But you know, you go to our side, I mean, there's 20 odd games between some of these teams. So not surprising, but I've never seen that. In all my years of playing Draft Day Sports Pro Basketball, I've never seen an entire first round like that. So let's move on. Let's see how some of these games play out, I guess. So we'll go forward. So we get to some of the game 6s and the game 7s. So obviously that's all a bit mixed at the minute. So the Hornets have got through. There's 2 game 7s though. The Knicks and the 76ers, the Hawks and the Magic are also in game 7s. Let's have a look and see how the Western Conference plays out after 6 games. So the Pelicans have beaten the Suns. The 4-seed Suns are out. Two games there are going to 7. Warriors have managed to get through against the Lakers. So they got their job done. But in the Eastern Conference, who's going through out? The Knicks and the 76ers and the Magic versus the Hawks. Okay, so it looks like our bogey team is going to be playing us in the second round. And that is the Atlanta Hawks we're up against. And the 76ers managed to squeeze themselves through against the New York Knicks and get themselves through into the second round. In the Western Conference, it looks like Dallas is going home early. Yep, the Thunder, 6-seed Thunder have got through. And also the number 1 seed, the Jazz, have squeezed through against the Grizzlies. Like I said though, I think that Jazz team is definitely not really a number 1 seed. They made a lot of trades at the deadline that I don't think necessarily helped them. But it means that going into the second round, we are up against the Atlanta Hawks. And none other than Trae Young, yet again, is up against us. I think we've split 1 apiece in terms of games we've played against each other in the playoff series. So we will see how this goes. Hopefully we've got enough this time with Kawhi Leonard and co to kind of get the job done. I think they are, if I'm being honest, our main threat at this point. I think the 76ers and Hornets will be easier games because we match up a little bit better against them. But we will be back next time to see how this Chicago Bulls team does against the Atlanta Hawks. Can Trae Young be that sticky thorn in our sides again and upset us in the second round? Or will we have enough talent this time to get ourselves through back into the conference finals and that 1 step closer to repeating our championship from last year? If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the like and subscribe button, and we will see how the Chicago Bulls team does next time against the Atlanta Hawks.